I didn't notice the other cars at first. I noticed the reflection. Late afternoon light lay low over the city, bouncing off glass towers and the bay. It flared on my windshield when I turned off the main highway and onto the narrower road that wound along the lakes. It was that soft, golden light San Francisco gets when the fog decides to be merciful, the kind that makes wet asphalt look like liquid metal. When I took the last curve before my place, the light caught on something sharp, chrome, glass, scattered where it didn't belong. Then I saw them, 4 cars, none of them mine, lined up along the gravel shoulder and in my driveway, like they were posing for a brochure. A white SUV with satin ribbons looped around its side mirrors. A slate grey sedan with a just-engaged decal, still stuck crookedly to the back window. A compact car I recognized from my parents' driveway in the suburbs. And a 4th, black, glossy, unfamiliar. I slowed without meaning to. The tires crunched over gravel, the sound too loud in the quiet of the cove. This stretch of road usually meant silence. A few birds, the soft lapping of water against the pilings. The occasional cyclist. Not this. This weekend was supposed to be my reset. The thought hovered in my chest, almost comically fragile now. I'd spent the week under fluorescent office lighting, hunched over dual monitors at my firm downtown, combing through financial models until numbers blurred and columns shivered. The lake house had been my screensaver vision. French press coffee on the deck, the gentle slap of water against the dock. My dog-eared copy of a novel I'd been trying to finish for months. Instead, I rolled to an awkward stop behind a stranger's bumper and felt my pulse climb into my throat. For a moment, I sat there with the engine ticking softly as it cooled. My fingers still wrapped around the steering wheel. The leather was warm from my grip, damp where my palms had started to sweat. Through the windshield, my house, sat at the edge of the lake, looking almost like a photograph. It was small and clean-lined, all pale wood and big windows, a rectangle with a sloped roof and a wraparound deck. I'd chosen it because it felt like a complete sentence, simple, precise, self-contained. The lake beyond it was a sheet of pressed silver, ruffled by a breeze. Only now, the clean lines had company. I could see a shape on the deck railing, white fabric billowing where nothing should be, a cluster of movement in the yard, the faint impression of color that didn't belong, blush, ivory, eucalyptus green. My stomach tightened. I turned off the engine. The silence after the key clicked out of the ignition felt too sharp, like stepping out of a concert, straight into an empty hallway. The only sound was my own breath. I could smell pine, damp wood, and the faint sweetness of something else. Flowers, maybe. I got out. The gravel shifted under my flats, small rocks rolling, as if trying to get out from under my steps. The air was cooler here than in the city, tinged with lake water, and the faint metallic odor of wet dock planks. I shut the car door gently, as if being quiet could rewind whatever was happening on the other side of my house. Voices drifted from the backyard, not one or two, many, overlapping. A laugh that was almost familiar, the higher, thinner register of someone giving instructions, the deeper murmur of someone agreeing or pretending to. I followed the sound. The path along the side of the house was a strip of slate pavers I'd chosen myself 3 years ago, after running my hands along samples in a warehouse, until I found ones that felt cool and smooth under my fingertips. They felt cool under my soles now too, even through the thin leather of my shoes. Shadows from the cedar trees broke the light into bars that slid over my legs as I walked. I rounded the corner. I stopped. For a second, my brain stole the wrong word. Not backyard. Venue. Rows of white folding chairs marched outward from my deck, like obedient soldiers. divided by a central aisle, laid with a pale runner. The runner pinched and puckered slightly. Where it crossed the uneven grass, a wooden arch stood near the water's edge, its simple frame wrapped in greenery, and peonies the color of inside blossoms. Soft blush, fading to ivory at the edges. Under the arch, a woman in black slacks and a headset was pointing at something on a tablet. Two men wrestled with a string of Edison bulbs, trying to loop them from the deck to a tall pole driven into the earth. A cluster of people I didn't know were carrying crates toward my sliding glass doors. Someone had draped sheer white fabric over the deck railing. It blew gently in the lake breeze, rippling like captured mist. On the far side of the yard, by the narrow gravel strip I used as extra parking, a catering truck had backed in, its rear doors yawning open, disgorging metal trays and coolers. The smell hit me then. Garlic, herbs, something buttery, layered over the damp greenness of the lawn. And in the center of it all, her back to the lake, stood my sister, Mia. She wore white sneakers and a pale blue jumpsuit cinched at the waist, a pencil stuck through her bun, and a tablet in one hand. She had that stance I knew so well from childhood. Weight forward, shoulders squared, chin lifted, as if the air itself needed her direction to move properly. Those lanterns need to be staggered, she was saying, flicking her fingers toward the deck. We want it to feel organic, not like a runway. Her voice carried easily over the yard, over the movement and the clatter. Also, the florist said she was bringing more eucalyptus. Did she text? I need to know how much we're working with. One of the women near the arch nodded quickly and started tapping at her phone, her bracelet chiming softly against the metal case. For a moment, I watched all of it from the edge of my own house. As if I were the one trespassing, someone had set a tall glass beverage dispenser on the deck rail, filled with water, floating lemon slices, and mint leaves, condensation beating on the outside. Beside it, a neat row of glasses caught the light. My porch chairs. Two low slatted lounge chairs I'd found at a second-hand shop and refinished myself, had been pushed against the far wall to make room for a long folding table. Boxes of candles sat open on it, little ivory cylinders lined up like ammunition. My throat went dry. I moved my foot, and the grass whispered beneath it. The sound must have been just enough. Mia turned. Her eyes flicked past me at first, scanning the space out of habit. Then they came back, caught, and held. For a heartbeat, something flashed there. Something small and quick, like the shadow of a bird across water. Surprise, guilt, calculation. Then, her face rearranged itself into a bright, practiced smile. Clara, she called out, perfect timing. The wedding planner, because that's what the woman in black with the headset had to be, followed Mia's gaze and straightened, smoothing her blazer. There was a quick flicker of recognition in her expression. The way people look at you when they're sure they know who you are before you've introduced yourself. The coffee I'd grabbed in the city after leaving work sat like a rock in my stomach. I walked forward, because I couldn't think of anything else to do. The trimmed edges of the grass brushed my ankles. A scrap of white ribbon fluttered near my foot, catching on a blade before freeing itself again. Come look at this, Mia said, gesturing toward the arch with the hand holding her tablet. The pencil in her hair wobbled. We were just deciding whether the ceremony chairs should face straight on or at a slight angle for the sunset. The photographer has opinions. I opened my mouth. My voice stayed behind my teeth pressed together. The wedding planner stepped toward me, hand extended. Her nails were short and neat, painted a pale neutral that matched her calm, polished smile. You must be Clara, she said. I'm Karina. Your sister has told me so much about you. This place is absolutely perfect. You're very generous to offer your home for the wedding. Generous. The word slid into me like a splinter. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, like someone speaking through cotton. Can someone tell me what's happening? Mia blinked, just once, slow. Mom didn't tell you, she asked, her tone light, as if this were a small scheduling mix-up. We're doing the ceremony here. The wedding's next Saturday, remember? We talked about dates. You said you'd be here less in April because of quarter end. I stared past her. My deck, my dock beyond it, a narrow strip of weathered boards stretching out over the water, had a white ribbon tied at the post, fluttering like a flag. You're having your wedding here, I said. The words landed dull in my mouth, like coins dropping onto carpet instead of metal. At my lake house. Our lake house, Mia said automatically, then laughed. No, I'm kidding, of course it's yours. But, like, spiritually ours. Karina laughed too politely, like she wasn't sure how much of that was a joke. My gaze snagged on a low table near the sliding door. It was covered in small white envelopes, addressed in looping calligraphy, the kind of handwriting people hire out for. The nearest envelope had my cousin's name on it. Beneath the name, in smaller letters, at the Jensen Lake House. I reached for one without thinking. The paper was thick under my fingers, expensive, the kind that left a faint indentation when you pressed your nail into it. Inside was a card, heavy and creamy, Mia and her fiancé's names in gold near the top. Below that, the date, the time, and the address, my address. The memory surfaced so vividly that for a moment I could smell new paint again. 3 years ago, standing in this same yard with a ring of keys, still warm from the realtor's hand, the lake quieter, the deck bare before I'd sanded and sealed it myself, the house still smelling like someone else's life and a little like dust. I'd signed for it alone, my name only, in looping black ink at the bottom of the closing packet. No co-signer, no we. My mother had walked the perimeter of the yard with narrowed eyes, hands folded around a cup of coffee she hadn't offered to pay for. It's cute, she'd said finally. Smaller than I pictured, but I suppose it makes sense for just you. She'd said just you like a category. My father had clapped me on the shoulder and asked how much the HOA fees were, if any, and what the resale value might be in 5 years. He hadn't looked at the lake. Mia, wearing a sundress and sunglasses, either too big or deliberately oversized, had taken a selfie on the deck with the water behind her. We should do a girls' weekend here, she'd said, already framing it. And holidays. Oh my God, Christmas at the lake. This will be perfect for family stuff. I remember laughing, but it had felt like coughing. I'd told myself it was just excitement, that they were happy for me, that the way my mother had said, family place, 15 minutes after I'd signed the deed, was just a figure of speech. Since then, it had all blurred. My parents treating the house like a convenient halfway point between their suburb and the city. Dropping in, on their way back from wine country, with friends in tow. Mia texting me that she was borrowing the place for a weekend with her friends because she was so stressed and needed to breathe somewhere that isn't our parents' house. Usually followed by a photo of the kitchen on Sunday night, half tidied, wrappers in the recycling bin at least, dishes stacked to soak. Every time I said anything, it would be great if you'd ask first. I really need to know who's here. Could you please not leave your friend's shoes under my bed? The answer had been the same. We're family, Clara. No need to be weird about it. The invitation in my hand shook slightly. Karina's voice floated around the edges of my awareness. The linens are arriving tomorrow morning, and we'll do the full run-through next Wednesday. Mia mentioned you were completely on board, which is such a relief. Venues with this kind of light are impossible to find this close to the city. Clara, Mia's voice sharpened. You okay? You look like you're about to pass out or sue someone. I looked at her, my younger sister, 2 years younger, but somehow always the center of the room. She had that glow about her now, the kind people mean when they say bride-to-be, a mixture of stress and attention, and a kind of borrowed importance. But underneath that, I saw it clearly now. The assumption, the invisible scaffolding holding her entire expression in place. Of course this is happening here. Of course you're fine with it. You're Clara. You've been planning your wedding here, I said. For how long? Mia opened her mouth, then glanced at Karina, then back at me. Clara, months. We've had this date locked for almost a year. Mum said she'd bring it up when the time was right. I figured she had. I mean, you're barely here. It's not like we're displacing you. Something inside me went quiet then. Not the quiet of absence. The quiet of a door closing softly but firmly between one room and another. I set the invitation down on the nearest surface, very carefully. My fingers left a faint heat on the paper. Excuse me, I said. I turned before either of them could answer. I could feel Mia's gaze on the back of my neck, hot and expectant. Clara, where are you going? Her voice climbed. We actually really do need your opinion on the chairs. The rental company needs confirmation. The grass felt uneven now under my steps, my soles catching on small ridges. I stepped onto the stone path, the slate colder than the lawn. Clara, don't be weird, Mia called after me, the keys of her voice going lighter, more brittle. It's not a big deal. You're making this into a thing. I didn't answer. My car waited where I'd left it, boxed in by other people's plans. I unlocked it, slid into the driver's seat, and closed the door. The sudden thunk made the world outside go soft, as if I'd put my head under water. The faint thud of music, testing from someone's portable speaker on the deck, became a muted throb. The laughter blurred. My hand shook as I fit the key into the ignition, only a little. Just enough that I had to take one slow breath in and let it out through my nose before turning it. As I reversed carefully down my own driveway, I caught a glimpse of Mia in the side mirror. Small, centered in the frame of my backyard, a clipboard clutched to her chest. Her lips were moving, the guilt that usually arrived like a tide at the first sign of displeasure on her face didn't. Something else rose in its place, a steadying. I drove. The road back toward the city felt longer than usual. The lake slid away on my right, catching the sinking sun and throwing it into my side window in stuttering flashes. The steering wheel felt textured under my palms. Every little grain in the leather strangely sharp. By the time city buildings started to gather around me, brick and glass stacking up in familiar shapes, the tightness in my chest had rearranged itself into something with edges. I parked in my assigned spot under my apartment building, the concrete smelling faintly of oil and damp dust. The elevator hummed softly as it carried me up. In the mirrored wall, my reflection looked normal. Dark hair coming loose from its work clip, navy blouse, tired eyes. Nothing to indicate that my entire day had shifted on its axis around a house made of glass and wood and assumptions. Inside my apartment, I dropped my work bag on the small entry table and stood for a moment in the dim light. The clock on the wall ticked. The fridge hummed. Very distant, the city murmured through the windows. My phone started buzzing before I'd even taken off my shoes. MIA, 6 missed calls. Mom, 3 missed calls. Dad, call your mother. The glow of the screen under my thumb felt too bright. Instead of tapping any of them, I carried the phone to my small dining table, set it down face up, but muted, and opened my laptop. The keyboard was familiar, keys worn shiny in the places my fingers found, most often at work. The action of lifting the screen, the slight resistance then give of the hinge, grounded me more than anything else had. I opened a browser and hovered for a second over the search bar. Then I typed, Mia Jensen wedding. It took less than a second for the results to populate. The first hit was an Instagram account. Mia, of course. The preview image was a photo of her hand, with an oval diamond ring, catching sunlight on a patio I didn't recognize. I clicked. Photos tiled the screen. Mia and her fiancé, Ben, kissing against the backdrop of a restaurant sign. Mia holding up a champagne glass, confetti in her hair. Mia on my dock, the lake behind her a blurred watercolor, her head tipped back in laughter. The caption on that one read, Final venue walkthrough at my amazing sister's lake house. So grateful for Clara giving us this space for our 3-day wedding weekend. 120 guests. Let's go! My hand tightened on the trackpad. The post was from 2 months ago. I scrolled. Beneath it, comments from relatives, friends, names I recognized, and ones I didn't. That view! Your sister is an angel! So generous of Clara to donate her house. This is what family is for. The word donate lodged somewhere under my sternum, like a small cold stone. I had never donated anything. Another tab on the browser caught my eye. A Pinterest board. Lake House Wedding Mood Board, with Mia's profile picture in the corner. The board had been created 11 months ago. I clicked through images of boho arches, grazing tables, champagne towers, delicate calligraphy, naming signature lake house cocktails. No sign of me in any of it. I closed the tab. My phone buzzed again, vibrating gently against the wood of the table. The movement made my water glass tremble and clink faintly. I glanced at the screen. Mom. Clara. Pick up. This is getting childish. The words blurred for a moment as my eyes stung. I rubbed the heel of my hand against my sternum, the way I did sometimes when a client's numbers didn't add up and I could feel a headache forming. Then I opened my email instead. My inbox had all the usual clutter: monthly statements, industry newsletters, internal memos. I ignored them and went to the folder labeled House. Property tax notifications sat there in chronological order. Insurance renewals, utility bills, homeowners association newsletters, digital copies of my mortgage statements, each one with my name on it. Claire Elise Jensen. I pulled up the scanned PDF of my deed. The black text looked crisp, even after 3 years. Sole owner, Clara E. Jensen. No co-signer, no trust, no Jensen family. I printed it. The printer on the shelf next to my bookshelf. Word to life. The sound felt too large in the quiet apartment, but also oddly comforting. Something mechanical, doing exactly what it was supposed to do. I set the warm paper aside and opened a new tab. Short-term rental contracts, Lakeside, California liability. I typed. Links scattered across the screen like cards in a spread. I began to read. Noise ordinances, occupancy limits, liability for injury on site, alcohol service complexities. I clicked another tab and typed, Trespassing private property events, California law. Clauses about unauthorized gatherings. Insurance coverage invalidation. My coffee had gone cold. I took a sip anyway, the bitterness anchoring. The buzzing of my phone finally stopped for a stretch of 3 minutes. Then it lit up with a new notification. A text, not a call. MIA. I cannot believe you just left. This is literally my wedding you're sabotaging. Mom is freaking out. Call me. Another text followed before I finished reading. MIA. You know you don't even use that place. I thought you'd be happy it's finally doing something good for the family. Family. I stared at the word until the letters blurred. My phone lit again. A different name this time. Ben. Hey, Clara. I know this is awkward. I told Mia we should talk to you properly about the wedding. I'm sorry you had to find out the way you did. I read that one twice. Then I set the phone down again. The screen still lit and exhaled slowly. The tightness in my shoulders eased by a fraction. I opened my banking app and scrolled back through transaction history. Fingers moving slowly. Down payment savings transfers. Extra principal payments I'd made when my bonuses hit each year. Automatic deductions. Every entry I tapped pulled up my name. It was such a small thing, seeing it there, Clara E. Jensen. But it made the room feel a little less tilted. I reached for a yellow legal pad and a pen from the drawer. The paper felt slightly rough under my wrist, as I wrote at the top, in small neat letters, "What's actually mine?" Underneath, I listed deed, sole owner, mortgage, sole payer, taxes, 100% mine, all maintenance, repairs, mine, utilities, mine, furniture, appliances, fixtures, mine. I stared at the list, the dash marks lining up in columns. At work, I did this all day. Categorize, quantify, assign weight. Somehow I'd never done it for this. My pen moved again. What they assume. Family place. Ours. Me as unlimited resource. My boundaries as optional. The second column filled faster than the first. My phone buzzed on the table again, the vibration skipping it slightly across the wood. It flashed with an incoming call. Mom. I let it ring out. A voicemail notification popped up. I hesitated, then put in my earbuds and hit play. Clara. My mother's voice filled my ears. Too close. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this drama is unnecessary. Your sister is depending on you. We have been planning this for months, and you know how anxious she gets. You have a perfectly good house just sitting there. It's not as if we're asking you to give up your job. You're being difficult. Call me back and stop making this about you. The message clicked off. The room felt suddenly very still. I took the earbuds out and set them beside the laptop. Then, slowly, deliberately, I reached for the deed again. The paper was cool, thicker than standard copy paper. My name looked different now, more solid somehow. Less like a formality, more like a fact. This wasn't about generosity or being difficult. This was about ownership, respect. I picked up my pen again. On a fresh page, I wrote, Step 1. Secure property. A small, almost absurd thought floated up. Change the locks. I imagined Mia breezing in next week like she had so many times before. Key turning in the door that I hadn't given her. My mother ushering in a florist through my kitchen. Her voice pitched just loud enough to be heard over whatever music was playing. The image, instead of making me feel resigned, made something in my chest narrow in a new way. Step 2. Communicate boundaries clearly, in writing. It felt clinical, almost funny to phrase it that way. But clinical was how I knew how to be strong. If I could turn it into a plan, I could follow it. My phone buzzed again. Dad, your mother is upset. Call her. I put the phone on Do Not Disturb. The silence that followed wasn't empty this time. It was spacious. I stood, my chair scraping softly against the hardwood floor, and went to the small storage closet near my bathroom. On the top shelf, behind a box of winter scarves, was a metal file cube where I kept home improvement receipts, new water heater, deck refinishing, upgraded smoke detectors. I pulled the box down, the cardboard rough against my palms. Every receipt inside was addressed to the lake house. The address printed neatly at the top right corner. The charges billed to my card. My signature at the bottom of the forms where they'd asked for approval. Those pieces of paper felt like anchors. I stacked them with the deed and the mortgage summary, clipped them together, and slid them into a plastic folder. The edges clicked softly against the table. Then I opened another tab. Residential lock change near me, I typed. The search results came up. My eyes skimmed over ratings, hours, service areas. I chose one with good reviews and dialed. When a calm voice answered, Lakeside Locksmiths. I felt the strange desire to apologize. as if I were inconveniencing even this stranger. Instead, I said, "Hi, I need to change the locks on a property I own out near Crystal Lake, as soon as possible. Tomorrow morning at 9. The voice said, "We can meet you there." I checked my calendar. I had a meeting at 11, enough time. 9 is perfect, I said. When I hung up, the legal pad with my columns lay between my elbows, the ink still dark. Something inside me settled around the decision, the way a lake settles after a thrown stone. Ripples smoothing back into a surface, deeper movements still swirling underneath. I didn't know yet what I was going to say to my family. I didn't know how many messages I'd wake up to, how many accusations of selfishness, of overreacting. What I did know, with a clarity that surprised me, was this. My house was not a character in Mia's wedding. It was mine, and for the first time since signing those papers 3 years earlier, I was going to act like it. The locksmith arrived exactly on time. The next morning, the lake road looked different, less like an escape, more like a boundary line I was finally choosing to draw. The sky was overcast, the clouds arranged in thin, even layers that dulled the edges of the light. It made the water look like brushed steel instead of silver. Drops from last night's drizzle still clung to the cedar branches that hung over the road, catching my side mirror as I passed, and leaving tiny streaks on the glass. I pulled into my driveway and stopped before the house came fully into view. For a second, my hand hovered over the gear shift. No cars, no ribbons, no catering trucks. I let myself exhale. The lawn still bore the faint marks of yesterday's invasion, light indentations where the chair legs had pressed into the earth. A stray white ribbon lay half buried near the deck's steps, damp now and clinging to the grass. One corner of the sheer fabric they'd draped over the railing still fluttered loosely, untied from whatever had anchored it before. The house itself looked the way it always did in the morning, windows reflecting sky, wood siding slightly darker at the bottom, where the night air had left it damp. The deck boards were beaded with moisture, little droplets collecting in the grooves. I stepped out of the car. The air carried that faint post-rain smell. Earth, leaves, a hint of asphalt. Somewhere across the lake, a dog barked twice, then went quiet. I walked up the path, my flats making soft sounds on the slate. My key slid into the lock as it had 100 times before. It turned. Inside, the house smelled like itself. Pine cleaner, coffee from the last visit, still ghosting in the air. The subtle trace of dried lavender from the little sachet my friend Leora had given me for the linen closet. Underneath that, the cool scent of lake air that always seeped in, no matter how tightly the windows were sealed. Everything was as I'd left it 2 weekends ago, before quarter end had kept me in the city. My mug on the counter, upside down on a dish towel. The novel I'd been reading face down on the arm of the couch, its spine protesting quietly. The throw blanket folded over the back of the armchair, still showing the crease where my legs had been. Only here, inside, it was easy to pretend nothing had changed. But the image of my yard, filled with chairs, overlaid itself in my mind like a double exposure. I walked through the house anyway, one room at a time, not because I thought someone was still here, but because I needed to remind myself what was actually true. The bedroom, white duvet smooth, pair of reading glasses on the nightstand. A single extra pillow I kept in the corner chair for when I read there. No confetti, no shoe scuffs, no extra clothes draped over the bed. The bathroom, the small bottles lined up in the shower where I'd left them. My toothbrush in its holder, alone. I was back in the living room, hand resting lightly on the edge of the kitchen counter, when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel outside. I looked through the front window. The locksmith van was blue, with white lettering on the side. Lakeside lock and key. A man in a grey jacket climbed out, a toolbox in one hand, keys dangling from the other. He looked up and spotted me in the window. lifted one hand in a brief wave. I met him at the door. "Clara?" he asked. "Yes." I stepped back to let him in. "Thanks for coming out on short notice." "No problem." He glanced around politely, not lingering on anything. "We're swapping all exterior locks." "All of them," I said. "Front, back, sliding door if that's possible." He nodded. "We'll install high security cylinders on the main doors and a keyed latch on the slider. You'll get a new set of keys. Anyone with old copies won't be able to get in." The casual way he said it made something unclench in my chest. He set his toolbox down gently on the floor, the metal thudding dully against the hardwood, and got to work. The sound of the old lock being unscrewed was oddly satisfying. The small metallic clicks and scrapes felt like listening to someone dismantle an old argument piece by piece. I stood on the deck while he worked, leaning on the rail. The marks from the chairs were clearer now in the daylight, rectangular indentations, like a faint grid, running the length of the lawn. There was a pale strip in the grass where the aisle runner had been. The arch had left 2 small holes where its legs had pressed into the earth. On the other side of the lake, a small motorboat hummed past, its wake trailing behind it in a V that slowly dissolved. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I took it out, half expecting another barrage of messages. The screen lit up with only one. "Leora. Hey, are we still on for pottery tonight? Need to know whether to bring snacks or sympathy." A breath of something like amusement tugged at my mouth. "Clara. Both, probably." Her reply came almost immediately. "Leora. Uh-oh. Family." I stared out at the water as I typed. "Clara." They turned my house into a wedding venue without asking. 3 dots appeared, then paused, then appeared again. "Leora." Okay, I was joking, but that is a level of chaos. Even my family hasn't attempted. "Where are you now?" "Clara. At the lake, changing the locks." A longer pause this time. "Leora. Good." The locksmith joined me on the deck a few minutes later. "Front and back are done," he said. "I'll start on the slider. You'll feel a bit more resistance when you lock it now, but it's more secure." "Thank you," I said. He hesitated. "Bit of a weird question," he added. "But when I pulled up, I thought I had the wrong house at first. There was a lot going on in your yard yesterday." The words twisted, just a little, but his tone was neutral, curious, not prying. "It's my sister," I said. "She's getting married, or trying to, here, without asking me." He let out a low whistle. "Families," he said simply. "Had one put their boat in my driveway for a month once. Swore it would just be a weekend. Never again." There was something comforting in the brief solidarity, the casual way he acknowledged the kind of boundary crossing that never made the news, but eroded you slowly, like water against stone. By the time he finished, I had 3 new keys on a small ring in my hand. They glinted dull silver in the light, edges sharp. "They keep one somewhere that's not obvious," he said. "And if you ever think someone tried to force a lock, call us. There are ways to see." "I will," I said. When he left, the sound of his van receding down the road felt like punctuation at the end of a sentence. I locked the door behind him. The new lock turned with a small, satisfying click, the kind of sound you notice only when you've decided it matters. I stayed at the house just long enough to brew coffee, my coffee, in my chipped navy mug, and stand on the deck with it, watching a pair of ducks glide past the dock. The dock boards were slick from the night, but solid under my bare feet. The wood fibers pressed patterns into my skin. I traced the rim of the mug with my thumb. 3 years of slowly letting my boundaries be mowed down in the name of family harmony. 3 years of biting back words because it's not worth the argument. 3 years of cleaning up after other people's celebrations in a house my name alone paid for. It hit me then. I was doing for myself what I did all day for clients, mitigating risk, securing assets, drawing clear lines between what belonged to whom. I finished my coffee, washed the mug, set it upside down on the dish towel again, and left. On the drive back to the city, my phone finally broke through Do Not Disturb with a call I couldn't ignore. Not legally anyway. My mother, only this time, she wasn't calling my cell. She was calling my office line. I found out an hour later, when I stepped away from my spreadsheets and glanced at my desk phone. The little screen showed 2 missed calls from an external number and 1 voicemail. My stomach prickled. I put on my headset and pressed the button. Clara. My mother's voice filled my ear even before the recording tone. She must have leaned close to whatever phone she'd been using. If you think ignoring your family is acceptable, you're mistaken. I'll be downtown this afternoon, running errands. I'll stop by your office. Maybe face to face we can sort out this phase you're going through. The message ended. I looked at the timestamp. 11:32 a.m. It was 12:18 now. My office was on the 21st floor of a glass building near the Embarcadero. Our company logo, etched onto a panel in the lobby that always smelled faintly of coffee and lemon-scented cleaner. The open plan floor hummed quietly. Keyboards, low conversations, the distant ding of the elevator. Everything okay? Arjun asked from the other side of our shared monitor wall, peering around it. He was a senior analyst, a year ahead of me, with perpetually rolled-up sleeves, and a habit of noticing things without pushing. My mother is making a house call, I said. He winced. At work. At work. Do you need an emergency fire drill? He offered, half joking. I smiled. Small. No, I'll handle it. It was a strange thing, realizing in real time that I actually meant those words. I went back to my spreadsheet, fingers moving over keys, but my focus kept snagging. Net present value, projected cash flows, sensitivity analyses. All of it blurred a little behind the knowledge that sometime in the next few hours, my mother would be walking past reception, past glass conference rooms, into the life I had built separate from her. At 1:06 p.m., the elevator dinged. I wasn't watching for her, but I felt it. The air in the office shifts slightly when someone new steps off. Voices change timbre, chairs swivel. It's a small disruption in the usual pattern, and after years here, you learn to sense it. I glanced up. She was impossible to miss. My mother was dressed for public performance. Tailored cream blouse, navy trousers, a thin gold chain at her neck, the good leather bag she only used when she wanted to make an impression. Her hair was sprayed into careful place, the same style she'd worn to PTA meetings and charity luncheons. She scanned the office, not understanding the layout, then spotted the receptionist and walked over in a line that was almost militarily straight. I stood before she could ask where I sat. Mom, I said, crossing the rows of desks to intercept her. Her eyes snapped to me. There you are, she said, loud enough that the analyst at the nearest desk paused mid-keystroke. I've been calling all morning. Why do I have to come all the way downtown just to get my own daughter to talk to me? I felt eyes on us, subtle, quickly averted when I glanced around. The hum of the office faltered, then tried to pretend it hadn't. This is my workplace, I said quietly. We can talk, but not here. Her mouth pursed. I'll book a conference room, I added. Or better, we can meet at the cafe across the street in an hour. I have a client call in 15 minutes. You have a family emergency, she said, ignoring the second part. Your sister is in tears. You changed the locks on your house. Do you understand what a mess you've created? Beside us, Arjun stood, pretending to stack papers. His eyes flicked between us briefly, and then away. I didn't feel embarrassment. Not exactly. I felt exposed, like she'd flung open a curtain I'd carefully drawn between my professional life and the messy theater of my family. Mom, I said, keeping my voice low. This is not the place. Then stop hiding behind schedules and talk to me, she insisted, her voice rising a notch. You have responsibilities. To your family, to your sister. She has a week until her wedding and you… Cafe in an hour, I repeated, my tone flattening. The one on the corner. If that doesn't work, we can schedule another time. But I'm not doing this here. Those are my terms. The word terms hung between us, unfamiliar in this direction. Her eyes narrowed. In my day, she said, children didn't dictate terms to their parents. In your day, houses cost a multiple of one income that didn't require a decade of student loans. I said, before I could stop myself. Times change. A small startled laugh escaped from the desk behind me, quickly smothered. My mother's eyes flashed. We'll see each other in an hour, I said, stepping back. If you'd rather not, you're free to go home. I turned before she could answer. My legs felt strangely light as I walked back to my desk. It was like walking through thinner air. Wow, Arjun murmured under his breath when I sat down. That was… efficient. Occupational hazard, I said, opening my calendar. I added a single-line entry at 2 p.m. Coffee with Mom. Terms. For the next hour, I reviewed a client's quarterly report. The numbers anchored me. The black text solid, where other things felt slippery. When my mind wandered, it wandered toward the deed, now tucked safely in my bag. At 1:58, I saved my work, grabbed my coat, and headed downstairs. The cafe on the corner was one of those places that tried to be both cozy and sleek. Exposed brick, small round tables, matte black chairs with thin legs. The smell of espresso hung heavy in the air, mingled with sugar and something cinnamon. My mother sat near the window, hands folded around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. The light from the street made a faint halo in her hair, glinting off the gold chain at her neck. Her lips were pressed together. I ordered a coffee and joined her, the ceramic mug warm against my palm. She didn't speak until I had sat and taken a sip. Your sister barely slept, she began without preamble. She was up until 3 a.m. crying, trying to figure out what to tell the florist, the caterer, the planner. Do you know what it's like? Watching your child's dream crumble because her sister decided to make a point. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the creamer form small tornadoes. Did you know about the wedding at my house? I asked. Before yesterday. Her eyes flickered. Of course we discussed it, she said. We knew it was the best option. It's a beautiful spot. You rarely use it. And this is Mia's big moment, Clara. That's not what I asked. Her jaw tightened. Yes, she said. We knew. Months ago. We didn't see the need to burden you with the details. You have so much on your plate. You didn't see the need to ask me, I corrected. We knew you'd say yes, she said, as if that settled it. You've always been the responsible one, the generous one. We didn't want to add stress to your life by making you decide. I let that sit between us for a second, like steam rising. So you made the decision for me, I said. We made the decision as a family, she countered, leaning forward. Sometimes parents know what's best. You work so hard, Clara. You're always alone in that house. Isn't it nice to have it used for something joyful? Joyful. I thought of the indentations in the grass, the catering truck, the wedding planner's smile as she called me generous. You know what I do for a living, right? I said, keeping my tone even. I analyze risk. I assess liabilities. I tell clients when something they want to do with their assets doesn't make sense, no matter how joyful it sounds. This is not work, she snapped. This is family. That house exists because we raised you to be responsible. Actually, I said, that house exists because I made a spreadsheet when I was 24 that told me how much I needed to save each month to hit a down payment goal by 30. Because I turned down trips and dinners and fun now, figure it out later. to put money into a separate account, because I worked overtime, because I took on extra projects, because I negotiated my salary, when it was deeply uncomfortable and you told me I should be grateful for whatever they offered. Her eyes flashed, but she didn't interrupt. And, I added, because when I told you I was thinking about buying, you said, I don't know why you'd tie yourself down with a mortgage when you're not even married. What if you meet someone in a year and they don't like the lake? Her cheeks flushed. That's not how I said it, she muttered. It's exactly how you said it, I replied. I wrote it down. It helped me decide to do it anyway. We looked at each other for a long moment. Outside, someone walked past with a dog wearing a tiny raincoat, the reflection sliding across the window glass. The point is, she said finally, that house is part of this family story. It's not normal for you to hoard it. We all supported you, emotionally, while you worked for it. The least you can do is let your sister use it for one weekend. My hand tightened on the mug. Hoard. The word curled around my ribs. I changed the locks this morning, I said quietly. There's a security system now. No one goes there without my permission. Her mouth fell open. You did what? I'm not preventing Mia from getting married. I continued. I'm preventing 120 people from using my property for an event I never agreed to, which would expose me to significant legal and financial risk and erase any remaining sense that my home is actually mine. You're overreacting, she said. No one is going to sue you. You don't know that, I said. I've seen lawsuits over less. Someone trips on the dock, gets hurt on the stairs, drinks too much, decides to jump off something. Who gets named on the lawsuit? The girl whose name is on the deed. You always think worst case scenario, she said, impatience sharpening her voice. You've let that job of yours make you scared of life. I considered that. I think realistically, I said, and I'm done letting your fear of conflict make you use me as a shield. You didn't tell me about the wedding because you didn't want to see my reaction. You didn't want to risk a no, so you wrote my yes for me and built a whole event on top of it. Her eyes glistened suddenly, the anger thinning. You have no idea how much I've sacrificed for you girls, she said, voice wobbling. We didn't have a down payment account when I was your age. We had bills and mouths to feed and your father traveling half the time. I put my own dreams aside. And this is how you repay me, by nickel and diming your own sister over grass and chairs. The old guilt stirred automatically, a reflex deeper than thought. All the times I'd listened to this speech in different outfits. After saying I didn't want to switch my major to business. After saying no to a blind date she'd set up. After not offering to pay for Mia's unpaid internship in New York that one summer. This time, instead of letting it drape over me, I set it aside in my mind like a coat that didn't fit anymore. I'm not nickel and diming, I said. I'm choosing not to be stolen from. Those are different things. Her eyes closed briefly. Mia will never forgive you, she said. That's her decision, I replied. She's your only sister, my mother pressed, as if that fact itself were a lever she could pull. You're supposed to do anything for her. And what is she supposed to do for me? I asked. She stared. If this is how you're going to be, she said finally, standing. I don't know what kind of family we're going to be after this. She left her tea untouched on the table. The chair scraped loudly when she pushed it back. A couple at a nearby table pretended not to listen, their eyes flicking down to their phones. I sat there for a moment after she left, my coffee cooling. The smell of espresso had gone bitter around the edges. I pulled my folder from my bag and flipped it open. Deed, mortgage, receipts. The papers formed a stack, about an inch thick. It wasn't a life story. It was 3 years of a very specific chapter. It was enough. When I got back to the office, Arjun gave me a questioning look. I lifted one shoulder. She's processing, I said. He nodded, understanding that processing in this context meant arguing with reality. At my desk, my computer screen still displayed the client's financials, where I'd left them. For the first time, I realized I'd gone an entire hour without thinking about whether this confrontation would make me a bad daughter. I'd been thinking instead about risk and protection, and the thin line between generosity and exploitation. The shift felt subtle and enormous at the same time. That evening, after pottery class, where I mashed clay a little more aggressively than usual and ended up with a lopsided mug, I decided to keep anyway. I sat at my dining table with my laptop open and every relevant document spread out around it. My apartment felt smaller with all that paper out, like the walls were leaning in to read. I opened a new email to Mom, Dad, Mia. Subject, Lake House Access. My fingers hovered over the keys. At work, I wrote emails like this all the time. Clear, professional, unemotional. This one felt more dangerous, not because of the content. I knew exactly what needed to be said, but because of who would read it. I began anyway. Dear Mom, Dad, and Mia. Effective immediately, the Crystal Lake property is not available for any use, including events, gatherings, or overnight stays, without my explicit advance permission. I paused, then added, this includes the upcoming wedding. The words looked strange on the screen, like seeing something you'd only ever said in your head, written out for the first time. I continued, as a reminder, I am the sole owner of the property. See attached deed. I am solely responsible for all mortgage payments, taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, and repairs. See attached statements and receipts. Any events held there expose me personally to financial and legal risk. I understand that there were plans made for Mia's wedding to take place at the lake house. These plans were made without my knowledge or consent. I was not consulted. I am not willing to host the wedding at my property. I will not be changing my mind on this. The new locks and security measures installed today mean that only those I choose to give keys, codes to, will have access. Going forward, no one may use the lake house without first requesting permission from me and receiving a clear, written yes. No one may copy or share any keys without my explicit, written permission. No one may represent the property as a family house or offer it as a venue to others. I understand this may be disappointing, particularly for Mia. I hope alternate arrangements can be made quickly and smoothly. I love you all. I am setting these boundaries to protect myself and my home, not to punish anyone. Best, Clara. I reread it twice. It sounded like something I'd send to a client. Factual, calm, final. I attached PDFs, the deed, a summary of the mortgage, a scan of some of the more glaring repair receipts. I hovered over the send button for a moment, feeling the weight of it. Then I clicked. The whoosh sound of the email leaving felt bizarrely loud in the quiet apartment. Within minutes, my phone began vibrating on the table, like it was trying to escape. Mom, you can't be serious. Dad, we need to talk about this in person. This isn't how families communicate. MIA, are you actually canceling my wedding venue a week before the date? MIA, this is insane, Clara. MIA, like actually insane. I set the phone to do not disturb again. On the laptop, I opened another tab. Corporate retreat venues, Crystal Lake, I typed. One result near the top caught my eye. A company that organized off-sites for tech companies, kayaking, trust exercises, facilitated workshops about leveraging emotional intelligence in the workplace. They were looking for unique lakeside spaces to partner with for weekend retreats. I clicked. The website was clean and earnest, full of photos of people in fleece vests, looking thoughtful beside whiteboards, set up in front of water. They had a form for property owners. If you have a lakefront home within 90 minutes of San Francisco and are interested in partnering with us, please fill out the form below. I filled it out. Square footage, number of bedrooms, docking access, parking capacity. Describe your property. Modern 2-bedroom lake house with open plan living area, wraparound deck, private dock, quiet cove, good light, limited neighbors, excellent for small groups. When it asked about availability, I hesitated for just a second. Then I typed, available off and on throughout the year. Not available on Mia's wedding date and surrounding weekends due to prior commitments. I hit submit. I didn't know yet if that company would be the right fit. I didn't know if I'd want strangers from a corporate retreat using my house either. But the act of putting my property out into the world on my own terms felt important. For once, I would be the one deciding how my space was used and by whom. I spent the next hour documenting photos of the current state of the house, the deck, the lawn, the dock, the kitchen, close-ups of the furniture, the condition of the railings, the small crack in the tile near the fireplace that I'd been meaning to fix. If there was going to be a fight later about damage, about it was already like that, I wanted a record of what already looked like. My legal pad filled with notes, insurance policy clauses about events, city regulations on noise after 10 p.m., potential costs if I did, hypothetically, allow a large gathering, extra cleaning, increased utilities, possible deck reinforcement, hiring security. I totaled the numbers in the margins. They were not small. Somewhere around midnight, I closed the laptop. The light from the screen left a faint rectangle on my retinas when I blinked. My phone was still face down. I didn't flip it over. I turned off the lamp, crawled into bed, and lay in the dark, listening to the building's faint nighttime creaks and the distant whoosh of occasional cars below. For the first time in a long time, the tightness in my chest wasn't dread. It was something like anticipation. A week ago, if anyone had told me I'd spend my Friday night reading about liability law instead of binge-watching a series and trying not to think about work, I would have laughed. Now it felt oddly appropriate. The next morning, I woke to sunlight slicing through the gap in my curtains. Dust motes floated in the beam, moving almost lazily. I reached for my phone without thinking. 17 unread texts, 5 from Mia, 3 from my mother, 2 from my father, 1 from Ben. The rest from various relatives, whose names appeared in my contacts more out of habit than actual connection. I scrolled, MIA. I literally don't even know who you are right now. MIA. You've always been so supportive. What happened to you? MIA. Ben's parents are asking what's going on. They think you're being dramatic. Do you want everyone to think you're unhinged? There was a photo attached. My yard yesterday. Halfway dressed for the wedding. Chairs in place. Arch halfway decorated. The sheer fabric on the deck. It looked like one of the inspiration photos from her Pinterest board come to life. I put the phone down on my chest for a moment and stared at the ceiling. It was a strange experience, feeling both hurt and not swayed. The messages pricked. Of course they did. These were people whose approval I'd chased since I'd learned how to reach for things. But the hurt didn't feel like proof that I was wrong. It felt like evidence that I was doing something different. I scrolled to Ben's message. Ben, I know things are tense. For what it's worth, I think you're making valid points. I didn't feel comfortable with the way this was set up either. I should have pushed harder. If you're willing, I'd still like to have some kind of relationship with you after this. The simple, straightforward acknowledgement eased something I hadn't realized was clenched. I typed back, Clara, thank you for saying that. I hope you and Mia have a beautiful wedding, wherever it ends up being. I'm not trying to ruin anything. I just can't keep pretending my boundaries don't exist. I hit send and put the phone face down again. Saturday bled into Sunday. My mother called once more. I let it go to voicemail. My father texted a brief, gruff message. Dad, I think you're wrong on this, but you're an adult. Just remember, family is what's there when everything else falls apart. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my friend Leora. We met at a tiny Ethiopian place near my apartment. The walls were painted deep blue. The tabletops, dark wood. The smell of Berber and coffee wrapped around us as soon as we walked in. She listened as I laid everything out. Mia's assumption, my parents' complicity, the locks, the email, the cafe confrontation. She dipped injera into lentils and watched me with eyes that did that thing I valued more than sympathy. They believed me. "You're not crazy," she said when I finished, just in case that voice in your head is trying to argue otherwise. This is textbook boundary trampling. The only wild thing here is that you waited this long to change the locks. I laughed, a short surprise sound. It feels extreme, I admitted, like I went from zero to courtroom drama overnight. "No," she said. "They went from, we treat your property like ours, to we're monetizing your asset for a 120-person event you're liable for. And you finally matched reality with appropriate action." I picked at a tear in the napkin. "There's this part of me that's 12, I said, still trying to get their gold star for being the good one. "And she's panicking. She's allowed to panic," Leora said. "You don't have to let her drive." The metaphor lodged somewhere quiet and useful. When I got home that night, my inbox held a new message. Subject: Property Partnership Inquiry. It was from the corporate retreat company. "We'd love to schedule a call to discuss your property and potential weekend rentals," it said. From the description and photos, it seems like a great fit for some of our smaller teams. We're particularly interested in the weekend of Mia's wedding date, as we have a tech client whose headquarters are in the city and who are seeking a lakeside retreat. I stared at the screen, the dates aligning. It felt like the universe had dropped a test on my desk. I could decline. Keep the house empty. It would still be my boundary. But the idea of my family rolling up to my house on the wedding weekend, assuming that my silence meant they'd worn me down, only to find someone else there, by my invitation, by my contract, made something in me go very still. Not gleeful, not vengeful, just certain. I set up the call. The next day, during my lunch break, I sat in a phone room at the office, small, glass-walled, with a view of the bay through a corner of the building, and spoke to a woman named Andrea from the company. We went over logistics, maximum capacity, parking, quiet hours, dock safety. She sounded professional, calm, appreciative of my attention to detail. At the end of the call, she said, "We treat every property we partner with as if it were our own home. Probably better, actually. It's how we stay in business. We'll send you our standard contract, and you can mark up anything you're not comfortable with." When the contract arrived, I read every line. I added clauses. No more than 12 people overnight. No open flames outside designated fire pit. No events advertised publicly. The company was responsible for minor damage. Larger issues would be covered by their insurance. I initialed each page as if I was signing something on behalf of a very important client. Because I signed on the last page. The date, in black ink, sat there next to my name. 3 days before Mia's wedding, I scanned the document, emailed it back, and closed my laptop. The point of no return is never neat in real life. There's no dramatic music cue, just a soft, ordinary click as you hit send. The river changes course one spoonful of dirt at a time. By Wednesday, my family's attempts to sway me had shifted tone. My mother's messages alternated between icy and pleading. "Mom, you're tearing this family apart over a piece of wood and glass. Mom, I raised you better than this. Mom, I don't understand what happened to you. You used to care about us. Mom, your sister found a backup venue. It's not what she dreamed of. I hope you're satisfied." My father stayed mostly quiet. MEIA. We found a golf club an hour away. It's fine. Not the lake, but fine. Just so you know, everyone will remember what you did. I read that one twice. Then without quite meaning to, I typed back, Clara, I hope they remember that I protected my home. She didn't reply. The day before the wedding, I drove out to the lake again. Not to check on anything, not to hover, just to be there. The air was clear, the sky a high pale blue. The city shrank in the rearview mirror, and the lake expanded ahead. When I pulled into my driveway, there were no strangers' cars, no ribbons, no fabric, just my house. The new lock turned smoothly under my key. The security panel near the door blinked once when I disarmed it. The small beep barely audible. Inside, everything was as I'd left it. I made coffee. I sat on the deck. The wood was warm under my feet where the sun had touched it. At 11, a van pulled up, not a catering truck, not a florist. A white van with the Corporate Retreat Company's logo on the side. Andrea climbed out, clipboard in hand. She waved. Clara, she called. Yes, I said, standing. Up close, she had kind eyes and crow's feet that suggested she'd laughed a lot in her life. She wore sensible shoes and carried her clipboard like a shield and a tool at once. Beautiful spot, she said, looking out at the water. Thank you again for partnering with us. I brought the team to do a quick walkthrough. Then we'll let you get back to your weekend. Our clients arrive tomorrow morning. Behind her, a few staff members began unloading folding tables and easels from the van. They moved with practiced efficiency, not the frantic energy of last-minute wedding prep. They had a schedule, a plan, a contract. This dock is sturdy, one of them said, stepping onto it cautiously. We'll keep them on this side for the kayak launch. Add a caution cone here just in case. I walked through the house with Andrea, pointing out where things were, what to leave alone. This closet stays locked, I said, indicating the hallway. And no one goes into the bedroom without explicit permission. There's a bathroom off the main room they can use. She nodded, making notes. We'll take good care of it, she said. We always do. It's in our best interest, and yours. When they left an hour later, there were a few extra tables stacked neatly near the wall and a sense of controlled preparation instead of chaos. I stood on the deck, watching their van disappear down the road, and thought about how easy this felt compared to the knot of dread that had lived in my stomach since Mia's engagement. Not because these were strangers, because they respected the word no. That afternoon, in the city, my family was likely doing a final fitting, a rehearsal dinner at the backup venue, some flurry of last-minute details. I wasn't there. The absence ached, faintly, but the ache didn't mean I should be. The morning of the wedding, I woke to my security app pinging softly on my phone. Motion detected. Front driveway. The timestamp read 8:03 a.m. I opened the app. The grainy live view of my driveway showed two cars pulled up along the road. My parents' SUV, Mia's compact car. The camera on the porch, angled slightly downward, caught them walking up the path. My mother's shoulders were set. My father's hands were in his pockets. Mia walked slightly behind them, her hair in rollers, a sweatshirt pulled over what looked like a pale dress. They reached the door. My mother tried her key. It didn't turn. She tried again, harder. I could see the small jerk of her arm. She said something I couldn't hear. The security cam picked up her mouth moving, the lines of her face tightening. My father said something too. He tried his own key. No success. Mia stepped up, tried hers. The lock held. They stood there for a moment, three figures on my porch, framed by the door and the windows. My mother slapped her hand against the door once. In frustration, my father put a hand on her arm. The feed had no sound, but I could imagine it. You changed the locks. I told you she did. Maybe she's here. Try calling her. My phone buzzed on cue. I watched it light up with my mother's name. I didn't answer. After a minute, they stepped back. My mother said something to Mia, who shook her head. eyes bright even in the grainy video. They turned and walked back down the path. My father glanced once at the camera, face unreadable, then got into the car. The two vehicles pulled away, gravel kicking up behind them. I stared at the empty frame of my porch for a moment after they left. Then I closed the app. Instead of making coffee at home, I pulled on jeans and a sweater, grabbed my keys, and drove to a small diner near the water. Chrome stools, sticky menus, the smell of bacon and coffee. I sat at the counter and ordered pancakes. The waitress poured my coffee without asking if I wanted cream or sugar, trusting me to know. As I ate, my phone buzzed again. MIA. You win. I hope your stupid house keeps you warm at night. I stared at the message. Then slowly, I typed back. Clara, it does. I put the phone away. That afternoon, the corporate retreat group arrived. They were exactly what I expected. A mix of eager extroverts and quieter types, all wearing name tags and company-branded fleeces. They carried laptops and yoga mats and reusable water bottles. Thank you so much for hosting us, their team lead said when I greeted them briefly. We really appreciate it. The team has been looking forward to this. You're welcome, I said. As I drove away, I passed my parents' SUV, heading in the opposite direction, probably toward the golf club venue. Our cars passed each other in a flash of reflected sunlight. I don't know if they recognized mine. At a red light, I checked my phone. A text from Aunt Ruth. Aunt Ruth. Heard about the venue change. For what it's worth, I always thought they took advantage of that house of yours. Proud of you for standing firm. The surprise was sharp and small. I saved the message. That evening, back in the city, I took a long shower, letting hot water beat against my shoulders, loosening muscles I hadn't realized were tight. When I got out, my phone had another message from Ben. Ben, wedding went fine. Different, but fine. I wanted you to know I told Mia. I thought you were right. She's mad at both of us now, but eventually I think she'll see it. I hope we can have you over sometime when things calm down. I smiled faintly at the screen. Clara, I'd like that. I went to bed that night feeling not triumphant exactly, just steady, like a lake after wind has passed, small ripples still moving, but the surface mostly calm. Months later, the story of Mia's ruined lake wedding had calcified into a family legend, told and retold at gatherings I sometimes skipped. In my parents' version, I was stubborn, unyielding, inexplicably selfish. In my Aunt Ruth's, told in quieter corners, I was finally standing up for myself. Life in the meantime went on. The corporate retreat company became a semi-regular presence at the lake house. Not every month, not enough to make it a business, just enough that a few weekends a year, groups of people treated my home like a place they were grateful to borrow. They left thank you notes. One group had all the members write something they appreciated about the space on a card and left them in a little bowl by the door. Loved the sunrise on the deck. It made our brainstorming actually bearable. The quiet here is like nowhere else. Thank you for sharing it. I haven't slept this well in months. I kept the cards. At work, something else shifted. In a meeting with the partners, one Tuesday, we were reviewing a long-term client's portfolio. There was a plan on the table, one my boss had drafted, using suggestions I'd made in an email a week earlier. The partner began, as I was saying, our strategy is to... I heard myself interrupt before I realized I was going to. Actually, I said, the scenario analysis on that allocation was something I put together. I'd like to walk through the underlying assumptions, if that's okay. The room went briefly still. Then the partner nodded slowly. All right, Clara, he said. Go ahead. I connected my laptop to the screen, pulled up my model, and talked them through it. My voice was steady. The numbers were solid. Midway through, I saw the partner's expression shift from mild annoyance to interest. After the meeting, my boss caught up with me in the hallway. Nice work, she said. You should take the lead on the next review with that client, and we should talk about your title. It probably doesn't reflect what you're actually doing anymore. 2 months later, there was a new line under my name in my email signature. Senior Financial Analyst. The raise that came with it was nice. The recognition felt better. On Sundays, when I drove out to the lake house, I no longer wondered who I would find there. No strangers in the kitchen. No cousin's friend's muddy shoes by the door. No Mia's sweater draped over my couch without explanation. If someone wanted to come, they asked. My parents did, eventually. The first request came in the most mundane form. Mom, your father and I were thinking of driving up to the lake next month, just for the day. Would it be all right if we joined you, or came when you're not there? If so, what day works? I read it twice, the word if shining oddly. I typed back, Clara, I'll be there the second weekend of next month. You can come up for the day if you'd like. Let's plan on Saturday. Please arrive after 11 and leave by 6. No extra guests. Mom. Understood. Thank you. The day they came, my mother held a small container of muffins when she stepped through the door, the scent of blueberries filling the entrance. We brought these, she said, almost formal. My father took his shoes off immediately without being asked. We sat on the deck together, the sun warm but not hot. The lake shimmered calmly. I noticed my mother glancing at the security panel near the door, at the new lock. She didn't comment. There was an awkwardness between us that felt like a new suit, stiff, not yet worn in. At one point, my mother said, I drove by last month when that company was here. The retreat people, I saw their cars. I waited. I still don't like that your sister didn't get her dream wedding, she said. But I see your point more now. Watching them unload. It made me think of last Thanksgiving. The mess. We left early for the sales. I didn't think about who had to clean up. She didn't say I'm sorry, but the words circled close to it. Thank you for seeing that, I said. We didn't talk about the wedding again that day. We ate muffins. My father asked about the foundation's work, a topic he'd always been more comfortable with. Numbers, not feelings. My mother complimented my choice of deck chairs. When they left, my mother paused at the door, hand hovering over the knob. We'll see you next month, she asked. I'll let you know, I said. I'll check my schedule. She nodded. Driving home that evening, the light low and orange over the water, I realized something that made me grip the steering wheel a little tighter. I wasn't angry, not in the way I used to be. I was protective of myself, of my space, of the version of me that had gone so long without believing she deserved that protection. Mia came later, not with fanfare, just a text on a Thursday afternoon. MIA, can I come up on Sunday? Just me. I want to talk. It's okay if the answer is no. I stared at it for a long moment. I thought about the girl who used to scream when I wouldn't share my toys. The teenager who'd borrowed my clothes without asking, then called me controlling when I asked her to stop. The adult who'd planned an entire wedding on my lawn without once dialing my number. I also thought about the look on her face in the security feed when her key hadn't worked. Not the anger, the shock. She had never imagined a world in which my no was real because she had never heard it enforced. I typed back, Clara, you can come Sunday, just you. 4 p.m. She arrived 5 minutes early, which for Mia was practically a declaration. She stood on the porch in jeans and a faded sweatshirt, her hair in a low ponytail, no makeup. She looked younger and older at the same time. Hi, she said when I opened the door. Hi, I replied. She stepped inside slowly, almost like she expected the house to feel different, now that it had stopped belonging to her expectations. In a way, it did. Nice chairs, she said, nodding toward the new ones I'd bought for the deck last month. Low, wide, with woven backs. Very adult. I huffed a laugh. Want some coffee? I asked. Sure. We sat at the small table by the window, mugs between us. The lake glittered outside. She traced the rim of her mug with her thumb. I used to fantasize about having a house like this, she said. When we were kids, I thought it would be like in the movies. Big holidays, friends sleeping over, people always around. I never thought about who owned it. I know, I said. She glanced up, surprised at the lack of accusation in my voice. I saw you as a resource, she said, words coming out halting, like she'd rehearsed them and they still felt strange. Like you were the responsible one. So you'd take care of the boring stuff. So I could just have experiences. The honesty made my throat tighten. And when you changed the locks, she continued, I felt betrayed. Like you'd broken some unspoken deal. You were supposed to say yes. That was kind of your role. In my head. She laughed once, without humor. That sounds so awful when I say it out loud. It sounds honest, I said. She swallowed. Ben told me something after the wedding, she said. He said, your sister did what you should have done. I raised an eyebrow. Meaning I should have talked to you, she said. Asked, not just assumed. He told me one of the reasons he was uncomfortable with the lake thing was because it meant starting our marriage by participating in the pattern where Clara is a resource, not a person. My chest squeezed around the combination of hurt and relief that flooded it. I was mad at him for a week, she added. Then I started thinking about it, about all the times I came up here without asking, all the times I left messes because I knew you'd handle it, all the times I used your name as a kind of magic key. My sister won't mind. She's cool with it. She's responsible. She looked at me, eyes glossy but not spilling. I'm sorry, she said, for treating your house like a prop in my life, for treating you like an extra. The apology didn't come with a dramatic soundtrack. No swelling strings. Just a quiet table, 2 mugs, the soft clink of her ring against ceramic when her hand shook a little. It was enough. I accept your apology, I said. She nodded, exhaling. I still wish I'd had the lake for my wedding, she said, almost shyly. But the golf club was fine. People danced. We cried. There are pictures. It's not empty. I'm glad, I said. I mean that. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind that felt like a bridge, not a wall. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. How did you do it? She asked. Say no. Stick with it. I kept waiting for you to fold. I always thought, no offense, that you'd cave if we just pushed the right way. I considered. I stopped thinking of myself as the good daughter first, I said slowly, and started thinking of myself as a person with property and boundaries and rights. I asked, if this were a client, what would I advise her to do? And the answer was never. Let 120 people trample your lawn and your sanity for free because they share your last name. She smiled, a quick, genuine flicker. So your job did make you colder, she teased gently. Maybe it made me clearer, I said. She nodded. I want to come up here again, she said, glancing toward the deck. In the future, with Ben. Maybe someday with kids. But I'll ask, every time. And if you say no, I'll grumble to him in the car and then accept it. We both laughed. That would be new, I said. In a good way. She finished her coffee and checked her watch. I should go, she said. I told Ben I'd be back by 4. We're having dinner with his parents. She stood, hesitated, then leaned down and hugged me. It was brief, not a dramatic clinging, just a solid warm pressure around my shoulders. Thank you for letting me come, she said at the door, and for making me face how messed up this all was. I hate that you had to, but I'm glad you did. After she left, I stood on the deck for a long time, watching the light change on the water. The sun was lower now, sliding toward the hills. The surface of the lake mirrored the sky, pale blue shading to gold, a line of ducks crossed in single file, leaving small V-shaped ripples behind them. Inside, my phone buzzed. A text from Mia. MIA. Thanks for having me over. Next time I'll bring dessert, and I'll ask first, promise. A smile settled on my face slowly. I set the phone down on the deck rail and went back to my chair. Later that evening, Leora and a couple of friends from Pottery came over. We sat on the deck as the sun sank. The sky streaked pink and orange, and a faint lavender that deepened near the horizon. I'd strung a simple set of lights along the railing. Not the wedding planner's Edison bulbs. Just a warm line of small round lanterns that cast a soft glow. We passed a bottle of wine between us, pouring it into mismatched glasses I'd collected over the years. Someone had brought olives in a chipped blue bowl. Someone else had brought a playlist that hummed in the background from a small speaker, low enough that we could still hear the faint slap of water against the shore. We talked about nothing and everything. Work frustrations, a terrible date someone had, the class where our vases had all exploded in the kiln. For a while I forgot about the wedding, the locks, the emails. It was just us, breathing, laughing, existing in this space I'd fought for. My phone, face up on the little side table, lit up once more. A text from my mother. Mom, dinner next Sunday at our place. If you'd like to come, let us know by Friday so we can plan. I looked at it, the phrasing almost painfully polite, and felt a small, odd warmth. It wasn't everything. It was a start. I set the phone back down without answering immediately. The sky darkened. The lights on the deck grew more prominent, reflections of them trembling on the surface of the lake below like small elongated moons. At some point, Leora leaned back in her chair, exhaled, and said, "This place really does feel like a sanctuary. It suits you." I looked around, at the house whose walls I'd painted myself, at the deck I'd scrubbed and sealed and cleared of other people's expectations, at the water that had been there long before me and would be long after. I looked at my friends, feet tucked under them, glasses in hand, faces lit by the glow of the rail lights. My phone buzzed again. A short message from Mia. MIA. Don't forget, next time I'm bringing dessert. With your permission, of course. I laughed softly, typed back a simple heart, and turned the screen face down. The conversation around me rose and fell. The lake breathed. The lights hummed quietly. For the first time in a very long time, there was room in my life that wasn't filled with other people's needs. Room I had carved out and defended, and now chose how to share. The world outside these walls hadn't changed. My family hadn't turned into a different family. But something fundamental in the way I occupied my own life had. The boundary lines were no longer drawn in erasable pencil. They were part of the foundation. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the wood solid under my spine, the waning heat of the day lingering there. The last sliver of sun dropped behind the hills, leaving a band of light at the edge of the sky. In the quiet that followed, I became aware of a small, simple truth. For the first time in a long time, my house belonged to me, and so did I.